Today on NerdOut, Voltaire governance. Welcome back to NerdOut, the show where we take a look at Cardano. We break it down, but we don't dumb it down. Today we're taking a look at Voltaire governance. This is a new SIP, well, relatively new SIP that's been put up on GitHub. It's not completed yet, so everything I am talking about today is just the current state of it, so take it all with a grain of salt. It can and likely will change before this moves into the phase of actually being implemented on the chain. So this is just kind of a state of the state for how things currently are. So Voltaire governance is broken up into three main power groups. The first group is the Constitutional Committee. They're kind of over here. They're responsible for helping create the initial constitution, and they are involved in most of the governance votes. So anything that changes, they're usually involved with it. We'll talk about some of those caveats later. The next is what's called DREPs currently. This is the community. So anybody that's in the community that has a little bit of ADA and wants to be a DREP and pull delegation from other people to give their voting power to these DREPs, they can. And the third group is the SPOs, and they serve a pretty specific role in the new governance structure. So we'll talk about them a little bit too. So first, let's talk about the Constitutional Committee. So the idea of the Constitutional Committee is this is to transition the network safely from the current set of key holders, IOG, Emergo, the CF, into this new era where the representatives have more of a say in how things go. So it does include the original key holders, but it could and will add additional, maybe community members to this Constitutional Committee. So their vote on any change is required. So enough of them, a quorum of them have to reach, they have to reach quorum, enough yes votes for the change to be implemented, except in a very specific case where if the vote is for having no confidence in the Constitutional Committee. So that's a very specific use case where they don't get a say. So if the reps decide to throw the bums out, they have the ability to do that without their say-so. The Constitutional Committee can remain in two different states. It can be in a state of confidence, in which case additional governance actions can continue to play out, or it can be in a state of no confidence. If it's in a state of no confidence, then no other governance actions can go through until it gets back into a state of confidence. Usually that's by electing a brand new set of Constitutional Committee members. So it's yet undetermined exactly who makes up this Constitutional Committee or how they're chosen, but initial members will include the three founding entities so that those keys can be transitioned safely into this new Voltaire era. So the next is DREPs, and I don't really like this name because currently Catalyst also calls their people DREPs, and they are not the same thing. So when you hear DREPs and DREPs, it's all confusing. So here's my suggestion. We call Catalyst representatives CREPs or CREPs, and protocol representatives in Voltaire PREPs or PREPs. So that's my idea. We'll see if that gets through. So for the rest of this talk, I'm going to call them PREPs. So anyone that registers themselves as a PREP can be a PREP or a PREP. It's very similar to being a stake pool operator. Nobody can stop you from spinning up a stake pool. Nobody can stop you from depositing some ADA. We don't know what this level will be yet for how much that deposit will be. It should probably be at a level significant enough to where it limits the total number of people voting on everything, just because the more people voting, the more crazy load there's going to be on the chain just to get a decision made. We don't know how much that's going to be or what level that'll be set yet, but that parameter is also going to be something that is on chain and could be changed up or down in the future. So the idea is for regular users, individuals, they then delegate their wallet to these P-reps in the same way that they delegate to a stake pool. So the staking credential is being reused in a new way, and so you could be delegated to your SPO for block production, and you could choose an entirely different P-rep to handle voting on your behalf. So this is like, I want my wallet to be represented for block production here and voting somewhere else. Or maybe that SPO decides they also want to be a P-rep. They could be both an SPO and a P-rep, but they don't have to be. It's kind of up to individuals what they want to do. But this P-rep role is kind of the main role of governance in the new Voltaire framework. They get a say in pretty much all the votes that happen. And their votes will be weighted based on how much ADA is delegated to them. So you're delegating to individuals, and they're supposed to, in an ideal world, they're public individuals. Nothing's been decided about whether or not they'll have to provide some type of DID credential or anything like that yet. So it's possible. We don't know what's really going to happen there yet. But they do get to vote on all governance actions. But since this is a brand new system, we don't know how well it's going to work. So we know we already have a group of SPOs that are active and engaged and everything. So if a governance action doesn't reach a certain threshold of participation among the P-reps, then those certain votes will fall over to be decided by the SPO vote. So SPOs, let's talk about them next. So SPOs only vote on certain proposals, and usually only if not enough active P-rep stake has voted. So only if certain thresholds aren't met, then it's like, okay, well, we don't really know what the community consensus is here. Let's give the SPOs a vote on this stuff. So for example, if the Constitutional Committee is in a normal state, and let's say that they decide to add some new members to it, but not enough P-reps come in to vote for that particular vote, then the SPOs are the fallback to decide whether or not those new Constitutional Committee members get approved. However, if the Constitutional Committee is in a no confidence state, they get no votes, and the P-reps have to reach their level of consensus in order to install a new Constitutional Committee. So there's certain things they get a say in, some things they don't. So like updates to the Constitution, they're the fallback. So again, P-reps is first, SPOs fallback. Protocol param changes, they're again the fallback. Treasury withdrawals, they're the fallback. Hard fork initiations, that's a special one. SPOs always get a vote on that one. So and again, this is the current state of the SIP. These things are subject to change. I'm just giving you what it is today. So yes, this can all change. The SIP is not completed. It is still in draft mode. Things are likely to change. There's a lot of stuff that's still undecided or unclear, at least to me, how it will work. For example, like how do testnets work in this new Voltaire era? How do we make sure they keep parity with mainnet? How do we test a hard fork on the pre-prod environment, and then we go to mainnet and we don't get the right quorums, and so the vote doesn't pass, and then we've got a mismatch between what's running on testnet and mainnet. Like how does that work? How do we keep parity there? It's still unclear whether we're going to pay P-reps or not for voting. If yes, this is just a crazy idea I've come up with. If yes, what stops something like a P-rep DAO from devolving into a direct democracy when what we wanted was this representative democracy? So let's say we had a DAO that spins up and says, I'm going to register as a P-rep, and this DAO will vote whatever way that all of my individuals in the DAO decide to vote. So if you don't want to be a P-rep, but you want to get paid for voting, then I join this DAO, I vote my shares of the DAO, and it's basically a direct democracy. And if this DAO grows so big, then the whole system kind of falls apart. So like, anyway, that's kind of some of the things we're going to have to decide and figure out, and how much is too much protection and control, and how much is, you know, enough to let interesting things happen. Vesting periods. We currently have, you know, a small vesting period for your stake to become active in a pool. Do we need something similar for voting stake? Or do we want to allow people just to pull tons of money off an exchange, vote that, and then sell it back? You know, is that legitimate or is that not? Do we need the same duration as a pool delegation? Do we need some period that's longer for that voting stake to become active? Term limits. That's something that hasn't been really discussed in the SIP yet in detail. And will there be some activity requirements for maintaining a P-rep status? So currently pool operators have to rotate their KES keys every 90 days or so to maintain an active pool on the network. Do we need something like that for P-rep so that they can remain an active P-rep? So there will be some workshops happening. The first workshop will be next week at the IOG offices in Colorado. And the goal here is to push this SIP forward, solving some of these problems, issues, getting clarity on some areas, kind of hashing it all out to get the SIP to a place where it could start be worked on by engineering teams. So who is all going to be there? It'll be the IOG engineers, Emergo representatives, the Cardano Foundation, and various Cardano community engineers and representatives. So a good wide variety of people will be involved. And so I encourage you to check out the current SIP 1694 draft on GitHub, look through it, see if it makes sense to you, comment on that if you have any questions or suggestions. This is all brand new, and it's really cool that we're going to do this on Cardano and hopefully implement something that really hasn't been done anywhere for on-chain governance and blockchain in the whole blockchain space yet. And so with that, nerd out.